How's it going, Woods and Forests community? I can't wait to get into this episode and talk with a professor of mine at college right now and also a mentor, Rick Hoch. But before we do that, I just want to break down what's going on. We're actually going to transition from season 2 to season 3 because we've had so many episodes and we're trying to start something new with this episode. So we're actually going to just move on and go to season 3, starting with Dr. Hoch's episode. He talks about geospatial sciences, what we're learning in the departments at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. He talks a little bit of backstory about who he is and different things that inspired him to get into this field. And we just had a really good time talking with Dr. Hoch. I can't wait to have him come back on the podcast. So just wanted to give you guys this update. It's going to be through all 4 of the segments that Dr. Hoch has, and then we'll go forward accordingly. But now we're in season 3, and I can't wait to share this episode with you guys. So sit back and enjoy a really awesome conversation that you can hear dialect between myself and a professor, and check out what we're learning in class. But that's going to do it for this. I can't wait to see you guys. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.
There's political geography,
Yeah.
economic geography, cultural geography, labor geography, and of course, there's all the natural sciences side. I mean, yes, because I don't know where this empirical data comes to back this statement up, but Esri or ESRI, they used to be called Esri, who's the dominant software producer in geographic information systems, they make the claim that 80% of all decisions that we make are spatial decisions. Where am I going to park today? Right? Where do I put my garbage can this morning? I have to take the garbage out. There's a lot of where questions that we deal with every day. And as a geographer and planner, we think about the where. What's the question of where in this particular context? So when I'm talking with my biology uh, contributors or partners, they may be thinking about things in one way, and we are thinking about them in a spatial way. We're thinking about the spatiality of the context of the problem. And Aaron, I think you get that after taking some of our courses with us and understanding not only the techniques and skills that you're getting from the geospatial side of the curriculum, but some of the other stuff that you took. You took the environmental impact assessment course, how we think about things and how to in context. So it's really important for everybody to understand that we live in time and space. We're so used to thinking of things in time, and we kind of take space for granted, right? So if I ask people, how do you tell me where Indiana, PA is? There's usually 2 things that they say, but most of the time they'll say it's about 45 minutes northeast of Pittsburgh, right? We talk about distance or space as time, 45 minutes away, because that's how we travel. But is that by car? Yeah, of course. But is it not? Maybe we're walking or bicycling. That would be a lot different. So we think about those things in a detailed and minutiae way.
Geography is really different. It was an eye opener going to college and just seeing the classes offered and hearing about it from a much different way. And I don't know, Josh, if you had that same kind of idea of what it might have been, but once you see it at the college level, it's a very interesting major. I think overall, he's talking about, like regional planning versus the geospatial sciences, and yeah, like you were saying, Dr. Hoke, some of the biggest questions that we have, I think, for frogs and toads in conservation is where do they live and how many of them are out there. I think those are very important questions. And when I got to IUP, I really connected with understanding what those questions were and how I maybe could throw my name into the hat to try to answer those, which is why we have, drones and now a 360 cam to take maps. And we'll get into that stuff in a second. But you were saying about wanting to become a like mastery into these different topics and communications and biology and geography, all these different things, how you need all of it if you really want to make an impact on a community. You need to be able to communicate well, know where you're at, and you need to be able to orchestrate or at least explain something of the animal that you care about or whatever it is, whether it be watersheds or some type of resource. If you're not able to have all 3 of those, I don't think you're going to be a compelling uh, conservationist or
I think
geographer.
communication I agree with you 100%. You have to be able to communicate your science. Some of us as academics, we talk to a very small population, right? Our research is very esoteric. We write in journals that nobody reads, and maybe 15 people, right? So we can do that, but that's not really what we focus on in our department. We want, and again, I'm trying to sound like an ad for our department. That's not what we were here to talk about, but
Yes, we are.
is that okay? I thought we were talking about remote sensing.
We're going to talk
But
about a little bit of everything.
but we prepare students as a professional. That's what we want. We want people who can work in the field, in the public sphere, as well as comfortable in the science sphere, right? Um, to be able to communicate the ideas of their own research and the research of their partners, or the research collaborators, and how to take that research outcomes and put it into what I call a vehicle. By vehicle, I mean some kind of um, accepted method or thing that creates that agent of change. So if that's a conservation plan, great. If it's a stormwater management plan, great. And a plan means this is our problem. This is our questions. This is the data we've collected. These are our potential solutions, and this is how we're going to implement that to create positive change. That's what we do. That's what we're trying to do. So we use the geography side to inform us about our natural world. We take that information, and not just geography, but geology and biology and all of our partners, anthropology and archaeology. We take that and then we formulate a way to make change, right, with it. So that's why we work as a 1-2 punch in our department, or our former department. And now as a group of faculty in our new department. And our new department has a lot of great synergies, right? Claiming environment or sustainability. I think it's going to open us up to even a larger understanding of how we can make impacts on our local landscapes and our communities. But going back to remote sensing, Josh, or Aaron, I'm sorry, or Josh, do we want to talk about any of that stuff? Like stuff that I used to do, or stuff that I'm doing now with LiDAR, or what LiDAR is and how that's changing.
I'm interested in LiDAR. Isn't that a ground penetrating radar of some kind, or they can see what's below the earth without actually having to dig it up, and then if they find something interesting, then they dig, or
Well, there's
might.
two different things there, right? So LiDAR is light detection and ranging. So you're using lasers to do this. That doesn't penetrate the ground. What you're talking about is ground penetrating radar. So that's radio detection and ranging. So you can send radio signals into the ground. It penetrates the ground, comes back. You get an echo. You get an echo back. So you can tell if there's different things under the ground. That's not my specialty. That's subsurface. As a geographer, we deal with things as surface processes and above. So I always like to tell people, like, geomorphology in the United States, that's generally found in geology. In Europe, geomorphology is definitely in a geography discipline, and we kind of have a lot of overlap there. So geomorphology is the hydrologic processes that create landscapes. So we don't really, as geographers, go underground, other than that geomorphic process that carves out our terrain and our topography. Our archaeology partners and geology partners, they look subsurface. So as a geographer, we think about things that move across the surface of the earth, right? So that would be water, trees, habitat, toads, right? Toads move across the earth, right? And that habitat that they use over time moves across the earth. That forest stand, that biodiversity, that biogeography moves across the earth at a different time scale. But also the weather and the climate, well, not the climate so much moving across the earth, but the weather moves, right? Meteorology and weather is, to me and to many others, part of geography, right? Because it's looking at temperature, humidity, and pressure as it moves across the earth. And those three things together give you weather. So LiDAR is using a laser, light detection and ranging, and it's a combination of 3 different technologies, right? That laser rangefinder. So if you might have your own laser rangefinder, you can buy one at Harbor Freight, right? You can shoot a laser and it'll tell you how far away the object is that you just encountered with that laser. So that's a laser rangefinder. It's not the same as a thermal laser, right? You can also buy that at Harbor Freight. Shoot something with a laser to tell you the temperature of it. That's different. Similar, but different. So a laser rangefinder is telling you distance. There's also the GPS. Now, GPS is that's our brand name for global navigation satellite systems. Right? There are many global navigation satellite systems rotating around the Earth. Every country or groups of country has one. Europe has them. Russia has them. Japan has them. India has them. Right? Some countries in South America have developed some. So our brand, it's kind of like a Band-Aid, right? A Band-Aid is a bandage, but we call a Band-Aid, we're just used to it, or a Q-tip. Those are brand names. So GPS is the USA brand name. And Navstar is also that same name. Navstar was a private company that was formed to try to operate GPS, developed by the Army. But global navigation satellite systems, or triangulation of where your precise location is on the Earth, that's the second technology. And the third one is the inertial measurement unit of that platform as it's moving. So the pitch, roll, and yaw of that platform, right? As it's moving, we have to compensate for that. Right? And there's a gyro inside these things, and that's collecting a lot of data. The GPS is collecting a lot of data. The laser is scanning as it moves across the surface like this. What we call, there's 2 different kinds of scanners really in remote sensing. There's a push broom. So imagine if you had a movie camera as opposed to a point and shoot camera. Point and shoot camera, the camera opens up and closes, right? Opens up and closes. That's it. You get one snapshot. Or a movie camera, it's open and it's collecting data. So if you have that type of sensor, it's a push broom. It's just pushing across the landscape. And then there's a sweep, as if you're sweeping with a broom, right? Back and forth. Right? You want to sweep the floor in your kitchen. Go back and forth, sweeping. So the laser moves back and forth like this. And you can make it move very narrowly or broad bandwidth, swath width. And as you do that, the laser is collecting data to tell you how far away the surface of the Earth is. And when you merge all 3 of those data sets together, and that's not easy to do, you can get a model of the surface of the Earth. You can get and what you were referring to, Josh, was the bare Earth model. So what LiDAR is being used for a lot, people really love it, is you can take away the canopy of trees and see beneath the trees. So there's a lot of science being done in rainforests in South America, in Yucatan Peninsula, in Colombia, seeing that the vast, huge networks of urban development that was there during those Native American civilizations that we thought were just periodic or sporadic around. They're all through those rainforests. You can see them. And so it's really changing the game for archaeology because they can see things remotely that we couldn't see before. Now I use it for hydrology, right? So the same thing applies to that. You might look at a stream and you go out and you walk around that stream. You could walk around it all day long for 10 days and not see that stream has been pushed, moved, tugged, modified, and moved maybe 10 different times. But when you use a proper LiDAR data set, you'll see those old stream channels that would be in the landscape. So we can tell the way that stream wants to behave, right? When we develop around streams, and you think about Pennsylvania, those 2,566 different municipalities, every one of those boroughs, I'm not sure how many of those are boroughs, but every one of those boroughs is built in a floodplain down along a stream, right? That's why those boroughs are there, those little towns. They're built along a stream in a floodplain. So they all have flood risk. And so we had, one of the jobs I did when I was working in the research institute was we were a cooperating technical partner with FEMA in developing a protocol to use LiDAR to map high resolution floodplains, because we had really poor floodplain mapping at the time. And so there was a project that the federal government funded called map modernization. We called it map mod for short. And we were modernizing floodplain maps for all of the East Coast, east of the Mississippi. And we created a protocol with the FEMA because we had the sensor, right? At the time, the sensor that we had, there were only 3 in the world that could map at that resolution, at that minute scale. So we were flying places around. We had a test site in Gilmer County, West Virginia, and we were doing a lot of stream restoration work with that LiDAR data set. And I continue to do that to this day. So it's a real game changer. And it's an active sensor, I mean, it's producing its own light. So you can fly that in the middle of the dark. You can fly it at midnight. You can fly it at 3 in the morning. You don't need the sunlight. Passive sensors are reflecting and capturing light that are reflected from material from the sun. Right? It's capturing that. That has to be flown at certain times of the day so you avoid long shadows. Aaron, you probably see that when you're flying your drone, right? You know you can't fly it at 5 o'clock at night and get really good imagery because you have all these long shadows, and that's going to obscure your imagery. You want to have that noon high sun, right? So that you have less shadows. So there's different methods and best management practices, and all of our students learn those things too, right? In applying their craft to whatever resource they are interested in. So I just got out of class before this, and I was asking each student, what resource regime are you interested in? How do you want to focus your particular project? Some students in there are anthropologists, archaeologists, so they're interested in cultural resources. Others are interested in water resources. Others are interested in abandoned mine lands and land features. And so that's what we refer to as a resource regime and impact assessment. And so you can tailor all these geospatial skills that you learn to a particular resource. Aaron's interested in biology, right? He's interested in critters, as I like to say. He's a critter guy.
That's an easy way to put it. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of different directions we could take with this. First, I'm going to say about the displeasure with Imagine. I'm just going to casually drop that in. But for Drone Deploy, it's capturing all 3 of those that you said and trying to make a model out of that, like mapping. And so for Woods and Forests Media, one of the things that I'm hoping to do outside of like having shows and a YouTube channel and stuff is to actually go and do survey work and also maybe even create maps. So along with going out to survey a habitat, I'm also looking with the new technology I got. The reason why that matters for what we're trying to do and what Dr. Hoch, you were explaining is, imagine me going around a pond and getting a walkthrough of that pond and then also flying my drone up to get the actual aerial imagery of that pond, and then I want to take that and I want to promote that, or let's say I want to go even further up. I want to hit the whole 400 feet that's legal. And I want to show the pond. I want to go around the pond, and then I want to show around that area. I want to show the deforestation that's happening, because maybe there's a rare frog that's using that body of water to breed, but the rest of the environment is deforested, or it's beginning to get deforested for whatever reason. I don't think there's a more powerful way to show or to prove your point than to let people see it from the actual scale that it's taking place. So it's bringing these technologies into the field, regardless on whatever field you're in. But at least for this field, with conservation and especially with like the habitats and the animals themselves, I think that it makes a very powerful message whenever you say, here's the animal, let's do a walkthrough. Here's what you would see looking in the habitat, and then look at what's going on from an aerial perspective, like just real close to where it's breeding, where they're supposed to live. I don't know. Am I wrong in saying that with what the information is that we could get out of Drone Deploy and some of these other softwares?
No, what I mentioned before, I think it's very well done. And the scale of the platforms is a real game changer. So when I was flying we had a LiDAR sensor, a 3-band camera, and a hyperspectral sensor. And we could mount the LiDAR sensor and one of those other two at the same time in our airplane. So we didn't have a UAV to do this. We had to have an airplane. And it was a Piper, I'm going to forget now. I used to roll off my tongue. King Cab? It's not a King Cab. It's not a Cub. It was a larger Piper platform because we had a computer rack system that was like a small refrigerator, like the size of this thing in the background. All right. And then the laser head was the size of, I mean, it was probably 4 feet deep and 2 feet by 2 feet, square. And now you put that on a UAV platform. It's about this big, all of it, right? It was $5,000 for us to get that. I mean, people would always ask, how much does it cost to do that? It was, for me to get that bird, what we called the bird, the airplane, out of the hangar, and just to get everything mobilized to move, it was $5,000 right off the top. Now you can take your UAV and do that for practically $0 now and fly that thing twice a day, right? Now, is the laser the same strength if you have a LiDAR head on your UAV? No, it's not the same strength, but those improvements are offset by all the advantages of UAV. So what you're talking about, drone deploy, what we used to call the software solution. When I mentioned the 3 different technologies, they're all collecting data at the same time. The laser rangefinder, the GPS, which is connecting with the satellite array, and the IMU, which is compensating for this pitch roll and yaw of your platform. You can't have it in an airplane or UAV. That thing wants to crab. The wind starts blowing, it starts pushing it, right? Pushes it, and it's got to correct itself. So the UAV does that in its technology, in its brain. When we were flying an airplane, the pilot had to compensate for that, right? We had to, it was a lot of rudder work for any of you who ever were flown in an airplane. That's your footwork. Keeping that rudder is trying to stop it from crabbing, getting that plane to being pushed side to side. So just for example, we had 1 million shots per second of lasers, over 1 million laser shots per second were being collected. 200 different GPS pieces of data per second, and 20 different IMU data points per second. We're talking millions, hundreds, and tens. And all that had to be fused together into one data set. That's the software solution. That's what Drone Deploy does. And so that's one advantage to what you're going to be doing. What we use Drone Deploy as one of our software solutions. The other thing is it does ortho imagery, right? Ortho referenced imagery. Any of you have ever looked at an aerial photograph? You look at any aerial photograph that you can see online, and it's an illusion. It's not really how it would look if you were a superhero flying in the sky. If you're a superhero flying in the sky and you look straight down, you're going to see straight down. But your peripheral vision will broaden, and that stuff all looks like it's falling away from you, right? You're seeing the sides of the buildings, the sides of the trees, and everything seems to fall away, and there's a parallax effect. So what Drone Deploy also does, using photogrammetry, is makes it look like you're looking straight down everywhere, which is an illusion. You can't really do that with your own eyes, right? But we don't really recognize that until you think about it, that we can't see that. We have to use this technology to get us to understand that, to get us that kind of data. And so photogrammetry is an important part of what we do also. That's part of that geospatial workflow. You have to understand how photogrammetry works. Structure from motion, from UAV images and pixels, and different frames that you're capturing. So Drone Deploy is going to give you that. Software solutions are great. The hardware platforms are great. It's changing the way we understand and collect and capture this imagery and this data. And then we have to go and sit at our desks and process that data or analyze the data. So that's where the science comes in. We have to know how to analyze the data. And so that's your geospatial techniques, your skills, your tools, all of the procedures that you'll find in the literature or in other collaborators. And so that's the traditional kind of academic research that you learn, that you need to learn if you're going to be a good analyst with this information. Just seeing a pretty picture is great, but we want to exploit that to the fullest. And I don't mean exploit in a negative word. I mean, we want to get as much value out of that data as we can. And so that's the other part of what we offer in our department is how do you do that?